Right.
I loved what you wrote, Nikki, about what this event is about.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if anyone else has taken the time to read it, but she broke down the value of the work we're doing with the Ka, pranic tube.
Mhm.
And she wrote down from different traditions, the Buddhist and the Christian and so forth,
Yeah.
how it's impacted their way of life. It was well written. If you haven't read her introduction, I would certainly do that. Before we begin, we do like a prayer of invocation. A prayer of invocation means you're invoking the presence of God. Uh, it's like you're becoming aware of God. And so, in that sense, it opens the possibility for greater awareness. Um, so, it's called a prayer of invocation. It's used often. And there's lots of different kind of prayers. There's a discipleship prayer that I sent to Nikki that's also very good, which shows our devotion to expanding our minds and joining with others of like mind from different dimensions. So the Harthars who were, has anyone bought the book? Did you bother? Oh, good. Yeah, good, Nikki. That's they're they were very obvious teachers back in the time of the Egyptians. They worked with at the time of Egypt, only the priests were a select group of people who had the consciousness to even attempt to work with this pranic tube. Uh, so, who would like to do a prayer of invocation, inviting our God likeness into our awareness? Would somebody like to do that? I'd like to start the meeting with prayer of invocation. Any volunteers?
I will.
Thank you.
Seven.
Mother, Father, God, creator of all, we come humbly before you today and just waiting on Charles' message. May you come down and fill our hearts with joy and fill our minds with new knowledge, awakening what we already have in our spirits. And we will be fortified to go into the next week to face whatever may be. But we always know that you are in control. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin. I really like the part that you brought out that it's already in us. So it's how we access what's already in us. And it's wonderful when we access it for our lifestyle, our careers that we develop. Uh, anyway, we're going to start with what's chapter 4 in this writing by the Harthars. And it's dealing with the fear of opening. We all have desires, and sometimes desires for fulfillment, desires to travel, desires to have children, desires to try a different occupation. And often our desires, we block them because we have a fear of the unknown. What will it take us into? Some people are afraid to travel beyond a certain distance. Uh, so we all tend to create our own blocks. So when we become aware that we're doing that, then we can free ourselves up and and move further into our expanded awareness of whatever. So this morning, I brought up last week the pyramid that's used as symbology for our being in balance. It's a symbol, so it has four corners and rises to the pyramid. Well, if you can imagine a pyramid with a pranic tube coming up the center of the pyramid, the basis of the pyramid, there's four corners, and each of those need to be in alignment for us to make our best progress in our growth and our spiritual awareness. Now, we're living in a time of accelerated change. You know, Bobby and I grew up in a time where there was accelerated change from the past. You know, we created cars and airplanes and invented so many things, and the internet. It took us to where we are now, and that was accelerated. But now we're moving into a period of super acceleration where the change is dynamic, and the tendency, yeah, thank you for that diagram. The tendency is to be afraid or be very concerned about what's happening, how to deal with it. There's going to be, you know, because of AI, there's going to be mass economic changes and social and cultural changes. There's going to be people totally put out of work and not know what to do. And there's people that are going to excel and participate in the dynamics of artificial intelligence. You know, so there's going to be a high percentage of population that won't even be employed. And so the social economic challenges will be for the governments of the world then to at least provide a minimum standard for people that aren't working or families so that they have shelter and food. So the acceleration of this process can be scary, and it's often discussed a lot, like the unknown of the change, how it's going to impact me as a person or a family. So it becomes increasingly then more important for us to find our homeostasis, our balance, our center core, like you pictured here in the pyramid. So the four corners of the pyramid, let's see, they represent four things. One is our relationship to the physical body and other subtle bodies, including the chi of the pranic tube. So it's our relationship to our bodies, our different emotional, mental, psychological bodies that we have. We have to have a good relationship with them. And then the other thing at the other corner of the pyramid, one's relationship with oneself and others. So now, if you can't love yourself, how can you love others? And if you're stuck in loving yourself or stuck in having compassion for others, then it's going to stymie our progress. And at times it certainly, you can see that in our experiences. You know, Bobby and I always were taught by her father that never go to bed angry. Get over it before you go to sleep. And because your subconsciousness is working on it all the time. And I'm sure you've all noticed that when we are angry at a situation with somebody, there's a tenseness, there's a tightening up. It's like we're closing our pranic tube. It's like our full awareness is inhibited, and so our relationship with ourselves and others is mandatory if we want to continue to grow spiritually and be able to handle the tremendous changes that are coming up. Uh, Ernest Holmes used to say in a talk that when we're one with God, we're one with the majority. So if you can come one with our internal spirit, then the universe is working to support us in our being our best. And then the other corner of the pyramid, one's relationship to the service and gives to the universe, to the world, to one's community, which often takes the form of careers, though not always or exclusively. So one author used to call it the diamond within us. That's our sole purpose for being here. And when we can identify with that, so we can, we can whistle while we work, no matter how strenuous the work is. It's because we're coming from our heart center. When things are laborious and we're really struggling, we're struggling against ourselves. That makes it life more difficult. So our relationship with the service that we perform for us and others of the planet is important. So the next part of the corner of the pyramid, one's relationship to the service and gives universal to the world and to the community, which they take the form of careers. We just covered that. The fourth one is one's conscious relationship with the sacred elements that make up the world in which we live. For us, it'd be like fire, earth, water, and air. Without them, we wouldn't survive. And we've certainly done a lot of harm as a global community to Mother Earth in many ways. And so what the author is just saying is that, a couple of 100,000 years ago, the quality of our air, our intake, was much higher. It'd be full of more vitality than it is today. And so, when I traveled the rainforest in the Amazon and found out the devastation we're doing in cutting down so many trees and there's no world power really policing it. They're just, clearing lands for cattle for Japan, so they'll have meat or whatever. It's devastating to the amount of oxygen that we need to have in our planet. It's horrible when they cut down all those trees. And then if you're the water, the Amazon provides about 1/6 of all the fresh water in the ocean in the world. And if we pollute the oceans, which we've done with plastics and all kinds of stuff and killing off plankton, and so we need to be respectful of planet Earth because it too is a living organism. Like us, it's the same elements that are in the earth are in our physical forms. So again, what the authors are saying, they're using a pyramid as an example, is that each of those four things need to be balanced in our lives if we're going to make more of an accelerated progress. And with the dynamics of change going on, it becomes important that we move out of fear into the pranic tube of love. And when we're coming from compassion, it's so much easier to solve issues and problems, come up with solutions, because there's nothing impeding it. There's no selfishness, there's no greed, there's no power struggle. It's coming from a purer source. So I really enjoyed that part of the book, and visualizations that you're putting up on the screen for us are wonderful. Now, there's another pranic exercise here we can do. There's several of them. There's many of them. There's many approaches. The important thing is, from the Hearther's point of view, is that we get back in tune with our feeling nature. If we don't do that, we're cutting out a good portion of our intuitive awareness that comes out of the universe that helps us resolve issues and problems in life and comes up with solutions. We don't want to stifle that. Any questions before we go into an exercise?
What is the name of the group? Is it Harthers? Harthers?
Yeah, it's Hathor.
OR. Okay.
And the book's called The Hearther Material. These are message from ascended civilizations that primarily live in the fourth dimension. And like all civilizations, not some people that can live in the fifth dimension or sixth dimension, even though the bulk of community is at a certain level. We're in the third dimension, but we certainly have had avatars and saints and sages that have lived in higher dimensions to bring, like Mother Teresa, Saint Francis of Assisi, Buddha. They've obviously higher dimensions, and there may be no end to dimensions. If we keep moving up a spiral higher and higher to whatever, to further expand our awareness, and I guess it's never ending. So on our journey, we've come together as an interfaith community, to attempt to raise our consciousness and be of service. It's one of the things I've always felt important, is that as a community, we need to tithe. We need to give 10% of whatever we bring in to help others on their journey, on their spiritual quest. Yeah. So, some people, whether you believe in tithing or not, it means that as you give, you can't be outgiven. There's been times in our life where I didn't want any more booze now, so we gave a lot of booze out, and so people started bringing more booze back to us. So whatever you give out, it comes back to you. So it's helpful to tithe. It's helpful to give service of time and talent and money to your community. It's important that we do that. So anyway, the next exercise is just a continuation of what we were doing before, as we're going to be breathing in, and as and we're going to be breathing out and become very much aware of our breath. For me, I like to breathe in from the core of the earth, which is fire, and breathe up through the pranic tube, through the heart center, right out to the very top. And I go to the central sun, which again is the symbol of fire and power. And you don't have to go that high. It's just a matter of personal preference. But the beauty of it is what you're doing is becoming aware of our feeling nature and more in our hearts. And the heart is a great transformer. It's our heart that transforms our negative or what we call unhappy or painful situations, and it transmutes them into a way we can live more happily. You know, we talked about from a spiritual point of view, transmutation and transcendence, and they're one's part of the other. We transmute that. Let's say we have a fear of anything, traveling, a fear of getting a better job, a fear of not moving beyond our present occupation. We want to cling to the old way. The heart is a transmutation center, which allows it dissolves that limited belief that we have in ourselves, that we've created, that's stymieing us, holding us back. Transmute that so now greater possibilities in our life can open up. And as those greater possibilities open up, it creates a transcendence. And what does that mean? It means we're transcending, we're rising above our own limitations. So the transmutation kind of dissolves the fear, and the transcendence allows us to expand our greater awareness in our life, and opens up, friendships and different possibilities of traveling or occupations or relationships. It's our one of my friends decided at the age of about 88 to go to South Africa. She didn't know why. She's up in South Africa, and she's kind of helping people on safaris to go there, that because she speaks English and lives in a local village. She doesn't know why she was there. Sister Theodora, who I met years ago at Mount Shasta, and she was the one that she worked on several levels. She worked on the portal for spaceships that were coming into the Earth plane, into the actual interior of the Earth at Mount Shasta. But she also was channeling a person that was called Sananda. And Sananda is another word for Jesus without the dogma around Jesus. That's not correct. Without the rigidness of making Jesus your personal savior. The only one who can save ourselves is ourselves. So that's the whole process of what we're about on the pranic tube, is learning to transmute our fears, things that cause us to be inhibited, to allow ourselves to expand and to transcend. And Jesus would have been the first one to acknowledge that I don't do the work, it's the Father within, pranic tube within, the energy within the universe he's working with. And he wasn't here to save the world. He was here to show us the way to how we can attain happiness, how we can attain joy, how we can attain peace, regardless of what's going on in the outside world. So Sister Theodosia I met her another time in Sedona. She moved to Sedona because here's the other thing I want to tell you about her. In her guidance, she was told to go to South America, and she did. And she lived up in the mountains as a hermit for 5 years. You know, how can you follow your guidance to take you somewhere crazy like that and now become a hermit and survive? And then you get the inspiration that you need to come back to the community and work in the community, and you find the airfare, you find the wealth, you find it's magical. It's absolutely met another lady in England who was dying when she was 21. She had 2 illnesses that would have killed anybody. And she made this agreement with her inner self that if she survived this, she'd dedicate her life to service and to God. And she did. And she survived, and she did a lot of healing work in England, and it impacted the church, the what do you call it, Church of England. Got to the royalty. She helped all kinds of people, and she she worked create a center where they worked with the medical community in concert with energy healing and so forth and so on. So it's amazing what people that honor their guidance system and don't have the fear of restricting ourselves and honor where it takes us into the unknown, the things they're able to accomplish. You know, certainly in our own community, Shirley Consantaro has done a marvelous job of following her inner guidance and using that inner guidance to coach others. You know, she doesn't have a PS professional degree. She comes from an internal knowing, and it's helped a lot of people. And she raised a family on her own as a single parent. Now, how do you do that? How does the universe support you so well in doing that, and then going on to help others? And so some of her, so somebody will give her a house to live in for a year. But, that's how she gets remuneration. She doesn't charge for this type of thing, and that's always anyway. I'm rambling on, but these are examples in my lifetime that have been wonderful. And then some of the ministers that I've known that have this devotion to life, to the spirit within them, and celebrating it all in a community. And what that does is like expands their consciousness. So when you meet them for the first time, you're like a God child coming to God. They welcome you, they embrace you, they know your spirit. They don't have to know your job, your profession, or your sins. That doesn't bother them. The consciousness comes out of practice, and that's another thing that the authors are impressing upon us, is that it requires effort. It requires work. You just say, well, I'll leave it all up to God. I'll let go and let God. And believe me, there's a time to do that. There's a time and situation to do that. But some of the people in life that have never achieved very much it's as an excuse, is that I let go and let God. And so if I'm not ambitious or I'm not going to have any desires, I'll just float. I'll just go along. But that, in some respects, that's certainly an escape from living our full potential. So once again, the hearth ours, and according to what Jesus and all the people teaches, it's an inside job. Buddha had a lot of struggles to get to where he was. He had everything given to him as a prince, and he struggled and he eventually came into enlightenment. And so our purpose on studying this material is to lighten up. And then the Kai is the process in which we do that. So there's another exercise we can do. Unless you have some questions, we'll exercise here. If you have questions, go for it.
I had a video of Kathleen McGowan, one of our previous guests on the channel, was doing a talk on the Hathors, and she was basically saying that they're the seven goddesses that oversee all that is, and Magdalene was one of them. She's very much a Magdalene advocate, and so she was talking about how the Hathors were overseeing Mary Magdalene and her presence and her protectiveness. But when you see the images of the Hathors, they're all in cow form. They're cows, sacred cows. But then there's this eighth item in any of the images that you see, and that's the bull. And the bull's role is to protect the cows. So they're protecting the almighty beings of other dimensions who are protecting the supremes as well as us in all that is. And there were two red-headed cows that she was saying were the most controversial because they were spicy. But it was an
Yeah,
interesting story.
it is. And when I look at that, we all have a tendency to make this sacred and that not. And yet the sacred's in everything.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so, and we're apt to find the sacred within ourselves, and we can find it in a cow or a fish or a child or a goat. It's
Yeah.
But that it becomes a crystallization if you think, oh, the cow is the god, or the elephant, or whatever we idolize as or hold up in a pedestal as a god or goddess. And that became part of the controversy within our ministry, uh, because Mother Mary, or the divine feminine, is so important in our development, because without that, there's no creation. But to ignore the divine father, or the divine masculine within us, is a mistake. We were out of balance.
Yeah.
So when the priestesses came into our community that were kind of devotees of the follower of what you just said, Jesus, what's her name?
Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. She's a beautiful soul. She's a great example.
Yeah.
But she's not to be worshipped. We worship the life force that's in everything. And so there's no one that appreciates Mother Mary or the Holy Family from what I know about them any more than I do. But I'm going to go to the Father within. I'm going to go to that, what the Arthurs are saying, that energy, that Ka, that spiritual force that's in all creation. We can't we can't imagine it. It's just beyond imagination, but we can use it, and it uses us to express our lives. We're never separated from it, even though, well, the time we find God sometime is in the trenches when we're hurting so badly, we're crying out for help. Thank you for bringing that up, Nikki. I appreciate it. Yeah. So even within the levels of like the fourth dimension, there are Hathors that are well above that fourth dimension. They're in fifth and sixth, seventh dimensions that are avatars, and that's where we talk about, the ascended masters, the White Brotherhood. These are people that have achieved what we're working on right now, a greater sense of spiritual fulfillment. So if you're ready for an exercise, any more questions before an exercise? We'll start. You just get yourself in a comfortable position. You can be sitting, you can be laying down. It's a good idea to have your eyes closed. And so we begin to notice our breath and our breathing. And as we do that, we can start from the core of the earth and breathe. As we breathe up, we can feel that energy moving up our pranic tube, our Ka, all the way up through our crown and out to the central sun. And then as we breathe again, we feel the coming down now through the pranic tube to the core of the earth. And we'll repeat that at your own pace for a couple of minutes. I'll be quiet. Feel your heart center become more energized, become aware of your heart as you're going up and down the pranic tube, the feeling nature. Become aware that the heart is a great transformer, transforms, it transmutes, and helps us transcend to a greater awareness. As we become increasingly aware of our breathing, our feeling nature, it enables us to move beyond where we've been and become of greater service to ourselves, to the planet, to others. When you feel your heart expand and enlarge out, we can label it an emotion called grace. Amazing grace. So when you're ready, you can begin to slow down and open your eyes. You can share your experience if you'd like, or you can share how your life's moved beyond previous limitations to where you are now. Thank you. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you.
So, Nikki, you come up with such fabulous designs, images.
I love the internet.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. So it's AI, using AI at its best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the greater good.
Yeah. So would anybody like to share their meditative experience? No one?
What I brought up was as Laura was entering today, she was concerned about the chaos in the world and the news and all these things. And what the heck are we supposed to do with that? And so during my meditation, including the spiral up, down fountaining of my energy, I was also imagining myself standing in the ocean and letting the waves bring in the love and take out the stress and the chaos and all of that. So I was just imagining that. And in the West here, the waves can be pretty strong. And so it's like I'll be standing in there knee deep. And then when the biggest waves draw out, it's almost like they want to knock me over. And so I'm kind of experiencing that as, okay, this is how we transmute the chaos into something of opportunity for us to take another step toward that divine acceptance, that unconditional love and forgiving all that is wrong with the world and taking it to another level, transmuting it to something that we really can turn into an opportunity and perhaps have influence over by standing as a collective and saying, we're not going to have that anymore. We're going to pursue this ultimate multi-dimensional space of all that is. And so that's my experience.
Also, thank you, Nikki. I want to make it clear that everybody's experience is unique to them. So if we have 5 people in a room, our perception or our experience might all be 5 different perceptions of the same event. And there's no right or wrong. The authors certainly make it very important that they realize that it's all a matter of choice. They're saying from their experience what they're doing is to help us. But if you don't think it's that, if you don't relate to it, then it's all fine too. Anyone else like to share? About sharing a time that you moved through an obstacle in your life, how that worked for you. You're stuck somewhere. Yeah, I was on real estate. I was stuck one time, big time. Oh my God. Looked like everything was crumbling down. And the home I had it previously was during a time when interest rates were 18%. Nobody was buying or selling anything. I happened to move into the new house, and I had to try to figure out how to sell or unload the old one. Well, I made a mistake. I felt that when I met the new buyer or prospective buyer, I I told him I'm going to back out of it, and I didn't feel right about it. And I made a mistake of letting him move into a few things into the garage. So now he had possession. And when somebody has possession of a property, it's much more difficult. So now I'm moving into a new house where it's requiring all my attention. I needed to spend 6 months completing it, and a lot of energy went into that. So anyway, that came back. The guy that bought my previous house got on loan for 18%. He was a contractor, and he knew, and he promised he was going to improve the property that he had bought from me. And so when he was tearing parts of it down under the guise of improvement, he never intended to improve it. And he let his dogs run wild and do anything they want, tore down things. Landscaping was left to dry and rot and die. The pool I had was not taking care of it. So I had to go for repossession. And it was not a simple thing because now he's in the house. And so he prevent me from repossessing it. He filed bankruptcy. And so that delayed it. So I now had another year to wait for him to get out. And I had kind of offers to kind of force him physically out of the house. I didn't want to do that because I don't want the karma consequences of that. So, Bobby and I went to the house and met with him and said, glad you'll be out of here in 3 days. It's waited for this for a long time. He went back in the same courts and filed bankruptcy for a second time and extended his stay there. How he could do that is boggles my mind.
Wow.
But anyway, I'm wrestling with this. I'm having big issues with it. And so I'm at a weekend seminar called the I Am Presence. And essentially it helps us do what we're doing today, getting in touch with our inner being. And it was marvelous. And it just absolutely, I was able to laugh. I found the freedom of joy in the midst of economic chaos. And that relieved so much tension. It was marvelous. So that's how I know this stuff works. And so, yeah, I finally got him out and I had repossessed, and I had to pay 18% interest for about 2.5 years. I wouldn't have done that, but I had so much equity in the property. And then I spent another $50,000-$60,000 refurbishing it so I could sell it again. But it was that instant of release that enabled me to carry on. And so that's to me is a great example of how this works. Yeah, until you worked it through your own life, then you can't really understand the depth of importance of it is. So, anyone else have any sharing of blockages that you're able to move through from whatever happened, whatever circumstances in your life that allowed you to move through that dilemma, whatever it is, relationships, divorces. Anyone care to share?
Hi, Charlie. It's Katrina. I came in late again. I'm sorry. Hi, everybody. But I definitely, of course, believe in divine timing because as soon as I came in, I was able to jump right into the exercise. And for me, it is always releasing and letting go of feeling um, less than or that. I don't belong. Like I'm sure all of us can relate being spiritual people or who have gifts or something where you were made to feel like you're weird. Or in my family, things like we didn't talk about that. Or if you tried to share something with someone, whether it's your age or someone older, you were made not to. And there's this thing, where I guess people do things to you that were done to them. And so we smother things within ourselves, or whether it's experiences. Everything for me stems from feeling like I had to make myself smaller to fit into a different mold. I had to be someone else. I had to be like this. And so I always suppressed myself. So, with releasing and letting go, every time I feel like I release something, it's like pulling back layers of an onion. There's something else there, but it's always something for me that is similar to that, making myself smaller to fit into a certain mold, which to me, it comes down to not loving yourself the way that you should. um, I tell some of the kids and even my kids, your first love should always be you, and it affects all of our relationships, your friendships, your business relationships, your social relationships, your intimate relationships, everything. And so as we release and let go, I find something new, but it's the same thing. So now with these practices, it makes me think every time I feel that, there's another layer that's been revealed. And so I need to practice release and letting that go. So for me, it's a lifelong practice. Like I'm 53 now, so I've had decades of doing this to myself where sometimes I feel uncomfortable, even in my own circles. And that just lets me know, you know what, there's some more there. So this is an awesome tool with its shadow work. So it's an awesome tool to make sure I'm continuing to release and let go. And when I do, the only thing I envision is actually letting it go. It's released out into the universe, but I see it being transmuted into something beautiful. So even if it comes back to me, to come back to me in a beautiful way, and it's always healing. So that's what I got. So I thank you for this. You reminded me of what I need to do every time.
Oh, Trina, and I just want to tell you, you are enough. You always are enough. You're a beautiful soul.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you for the sharing of the experience of life and how we move beyond our fears. And I mentioned this before. Emma Curtis Hopkins was responsible for teaching and a lot of the New Age people, like unity and science of mind. She taught them the basis of her understanding, like the Arthurs are teaching us. One of the things that struck me that she said, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, is that she would say being tied to a belief is like being tied to a stake. So we need to examine our belief systems, and no matter how mystical or how our beliefs can imprison us and not allow us to move beyond is another. It sometimes requires transmutation, to letting go. And years ago, I read a book by Judo-Christian Murdy, and I never heard of him. And I was calling on Void Rubber Company, and the person that was the controller went out to lunch, and he introduced me to the book, and he was I think a recovering alcoholic. When I read the book, for 10 years, these principles that Murdy was talking about made so much sense, but they were culturally not ingrained in me. And culturally, I was thinking other things, and I was like, I didn't want to let them go. You know, they're familiar. And so that's what we're talking about a lot today, is the transmutation of things that impede us, that sometimes we don't even realize we're impeded. That's often be the case. So practice then, any spiritual practice that really helps us transmute our pain and our suffering, our difficulties, is obviously our tools to help us grow. So thank you, authors, and thank you for Tom Kenyon and Virginia Scene, who was another magical person in my lifetime that became part of our ministry. Our ministry has attracted a number of well-known dignitaries along the line, and I'm grateful for those that have stepped out and lived their life's purpose regardless of what others think. They've moved beyond needing to please others. They've moved beyond. They've found that Kai, they found that spirit within them, and they've honored that and lived that as a task, lived that as a way of bringing something into the world that, like this book, that came to me and that I wanted to share with you all. So thank you for being here. I'm
Thank you
sorry.
for sharing. Thank you for sharing. That was very interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's more to the book. If you want to do a continuation, I will plow through it and share some other things. But I would, if you're interested, I would then advise you during the week to put this into practice and then come back and report, you know, how, has it changed anything in your life? You're identifying with your heart center, with the feeling nature? Have you been able to use it as a tool to move beyond something you might have been stuck in, or poor relationship, or a belief about you can't do something, you know? Yeah. So thank you all for being here and listening to me ramble on.
We love your rambling, Charlie. All right, everybody have a good week. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye, folks.
Thank you. Have a
Good seeing
wonderful
ya.
week. Love to all.